What's going on, guys? I'm Jody. This is Inspire Woodcraft. About a year and a half or so ago, I did a shelving system and I needed to have a way to run a very consistent dado the width of 3/4 inch plywood. I need to do it consistently. So I came up with this jig. This is essentially 2 rails and 2 fences, and this is all put together perfectly square. So the idea here is that I can set this on here. I can drop my router on here, get this bit lined up exactly on the line, and just push it down like this. I can then line this up straight and flat on here, slide it up against my router base, and now I have sort of a template, if you will, but it's with 2 square straight edges. So now I can run my router this way. When I get to the end of my cut, I can just scoot it over, hopefully you guys can see that, to this side and run it the other way. And now I end up with a nice square groove that is just the same thickness as this. Now, there's one downside to this, and that's the fact that you'd have to make a different jig for each one of the sizes you wanted to repeat. But it works really good, and it works for everybody. So if you have a lower end router and you can't come up with a jig that uses bushings because your router can't have bushings for whatever reason, this would work for anybody. The reason is because it uses the base of the router, and every router has a base. Okay, if your router doesn't have a base, make one. The question that I get asked all the time, however, is why I don't use the flat side of the router when I do something with a straight edge. So I'm going to switch over real quick to this simple T-square. This is just a shop-made T-square. Of course, again, scrap plywood. I just use it as a very simple straight edge. When I don't need a particular width, I just need to run a line for whatever it is. Okay, now, same thing. I have a simple straight edge attached here. I use the round part of my router base as opposed to the flat. And I do it for 2 different reasons. One is safety and ergonomics, arguably the most important thing. I want all my router controls on this machine in front of me. I want to be able to get to everything as I'm using the machine. In case something happens, I can shut it off, I can adjust it, I can do whatever I need to do. And on this router, everything is on this side. I have the power switch, the speed controls, the plunge lever, everything that I need is right in front of me. Even the handles are shaped to have it be in front of me. That being said, I need to use the round part of the base. So I'm going to butt this right up against here, and now I can push and I can pull all day long, keeping this directly in front of me, safe, less fatigue, using the machine the way it was intended to. If I was to turn this and use the flat side of the router base against the straight edge, I would have to turn and things would get kind of awkward. Now, logic will tell you that you could just then turn your workpiece, but keep an open mind. This is just a sample piece. It's probably 14 by 20 inches or so. If this was a 6-foot long cabinet side shelf, you know, I was gonna put shelves in it or something, and I needed to run a bunch of dados, this would get very tiring very quick. And I couldn't just, of course, turn the material or turn myself very easily. So I've set myself up so that I can just run this all day long on that 6-foot piece. It works really good. Now, if this piece was wider than that, I could also slide this all the way down there, turn the machine off if I needed to, go around to the other side of the table, and then make the cut going the other direction. Now, the other reason why I don't use the flat side is because the flat side, even if you're not awkward when you're doing it, will cause a huge issue. I'm going to show you why. This is going to screw up your cuts. Now, I know there's going to be someone who says they use the flat side and it works for them every single time. That's awesome. I'm glad it works for you. But there's a huge potential here for having this be screwed up. If I turn this router bit so that the cutter is on this line, so I'm going to turn this cutter head so that it points to this line, and bring this down so you guys can see it a little bit better. If I run this with the flat side against here, in theory, if everything goes right, those 2 lines stay together. I don't know if you guys saw that little wiggle there. What happens if I twist this? And that's the question I get all the time, is what happens if you turn your router? You're gonna get all messed up because you're on the round base. Well, again, logically that makes sense. But practically, it doesn't work at all. Because if I get this router twisted at all, you can see how far off my line is, okay? Which means I have the potential for going all the way out here, actually right about there, because now I'm on the round side of my base, okay? So because this is such a long path, there's a lot more gripping area here. And because I'm holding it awkward, that means if I start down here and I go to push, and then I go to position my body, you can see what happened already. And I now have a gap here, and my mark is no longer where I wanted it to be, right? If I use the round part of my base, okay, I can turn this router all the way around, almost all the way around completely, and never move my router bit from its intended distance from my straight edge. As an example, we'll use this tooth this time on this line, okay? And again, I want to follow that line. But as I go, if I hold the router bit and turn this, because keep in mind, let's see if you guys can actually see this. As I turn that router bit, the router base doesn't move. That's basically the short answer. I use the round part of the base because whenever you're doing something on round, you're centered, okay? There is an argument to that. Well, I will also say that there's less friction here because you have a smaller point of contact. However, the argument for that is you don't know if your sub base, so for those that you don't know, this is the base and this is the sub base, this black part. You don't know if your sub base is perfectly centered to the center of this bit. That is a valid point. The center of this bit needs to be the same distance from here to the edge all the way around. And when I looked into this, the argument was that people just didn't know if this was centered to that. So in their minds, the obvious choice is to then use the flat, because the flat can't have, it can be adjusted in or out, but it's flat. It can't move like it would with a circle. If this sub base was shoved too far over to one side or the other, and you turned this router, you would eventually come offline just a little bit, because this would become sort of an oval shape, the reference from here to here. So if you want to know the system I came up with to adjust this, that should work, I think, for most people, depending on your router, I suppose. Stay tuned. I'm going to reset the cameras here. I'm going to show you guys how I figured out how to make sure that this is in the center of our sub base. Every router is built different, so I'm not going to say that this is exactly how it's going to work on your router necessarily, but I do encourage you to take a look if this is something you might be concerned with. This sub base, again, that's the black part, is adjustable. So in my case, I have 3 screws here. If I give them a good quarter or so turn, I can now move this separately, independently from the base itself, okay? Now, I'm going to take this bit out, and again, this is a different process for everybody. I happen to need my wrenches to do this. I know some routers, like my old Craftsman, have like a quick lock system. This particular router actually requires both wrenches. What I have here is I have this 1/4 inch bull nose. So that means that the width of this is the same as the router shaft itself, the router bit. Okay, I'm gonna actually install this upside down. I'm gonna drop it down in there. I'm gonna tighten it up, and I'm only gonna tighten it up just enough so that this thing doesn't wiggle, okay? I just don't want there to be any play in this. Now what I did is I took this little piece of 3/4 inch plywood. I drew a circle just a little bit bigger than the dimension of this hole here so it can't fall in there. And I first drilled a 1/4 inch hole right down the center of it, perfectly down the center. Then I chucked it up in my drill press. I put and you could clamp a drill to a table and do this, I suppose, as well. But I put a small threaded rod through here. I have a nut on this side. I put a wing nut on this side. Hopefully this is actually showing up for you guys. There we go. And now I have this little setup here. I clamped it, chucked it up into the drill press and turned. And as it turned, took some sandpaper and I just sort of made a cone shape with it, right? So I just feathered this edge down until it made a cone shape. Anytime you have a cone, you insert that cone into a circle, it's going to self-center. That's just kind of how things work. So now that I have this piece, I will say ahead of time, is that I know Bosch and DeWalt at least make a centering cone. It looks similar to a 45-degree chamfer bit. So it has no cutter teeth on it. It's just a cone, no bearing, no cap screw. And you insert this into the router itself, similar to what we're doing now, and then lower and adjust the sub base until you get it centered. Okay, I don't happen to have one. And I don't know that one size fits all. If you have a Bosch centering cone, I don't know if you can use it on a Ryobi trim router or something. So this sort of system that I came up with is so that most everybody can figure out how to get this done with stuff they have laying around the shop. So bear with me. Okay, I now have a cone-shaped piece of plywood here with the hole drilled right in the center of it, 1/4 inch, matches that bit here. I'm gonna drop this sub base down. Okay, I'm just gonna set this on top. Okay, thing spins. You might be able to see there's a little bit of a gap here. Okay, that's because I need to raise this sub base up. I need to raise this base up just a little bit. Now, what I can do is, this is still loose. Let's say that it was all the way over to that side right here, okay? I can take this, set it on here. Watch what happens when I push down. Okay, it automatically centers. Okay, same thing would happen if I was way over here. Drop this in here, because we have a cone shape and a round base, automatically centered. Now the thing I need to do after that, and I maybe don't need to, but it's personal preference, I suppose, is on this back edge, I'm just feeling that the sub base has a similar reveal all the way across here to the base itself, and I'm not concerned with it too much, so I'm just gonna make sure that it just kind of feels the same on both sides, make sure that's centered down, and then I'm just gonna tighten the sub base back up. And now, my sub base is the same all the way around. Okay. Now, of course, someone's gonna ask, well, how do you know? So the way I checked it, where's my other wrench? Oh, it's already in there. Okay, the way I checked it is I put in this chamfer bit. This chamfer bit has a bearing, which means it has a cap screw. And in the center of that cap screw, it's gonna be dished out, which means that I can get a pair of calipers in there. I'm gonna tighten this up just enough so that it doesn't wiggle around. I'm gonna bring this base up just so that this is flat across this plane here, okay? Then I took a pair of calipers. You could also, if you're in a bind, you don't have calipers or another way to measure, just use a regular pencil compass, okay? Drop the center of that in there, and now you have a measuring device. So this can be used as a measuring device. It's a side note. But if you do have a pair of calipers, okay, you drop that right into the center of that cap screw because they're dished out a little bit. That'll fall right down into the center. And you want to basically just turn this until you come over and you measure to a certain point. Okay, I'm going right to the lip, right to the edge there. If I turn this to the other side, it should be the same, which it is. Okay, that means that it's probably going to be the same the whole way around, which it is. Now, I will also say, this isn't a machine shop. I'm not doing this to the several thousandths of an inch, okay? This is good enough, so to speak, for what we use this for. We're trying to run dados to insert other pieces and shelving and stuff like that. That's the task we're trying to accomplish. This is going to work for that. Perfect. I know, because that's what I do. This is a really easy thing to do. It makes total sense, and it's efficient. It works, okay? So again, I just took that little piece of 3/4 inch plywood, it's just some scrap I had laying around, found the center of it, drilled the hole, chucked it up, sanded that cone shape to it, and then kind of just got some pieces. If you don't have a 1/4 inch bullnose bit, you could use anything else. In fact, you could probably get away with using the piece of threaded rod that you chucked up in there to begin with. So I'm just saying, look around, get resourceful, get the job done. Now you can use the round part knowing that no matter which direction you turn that thing, it's going to be exactly where you wanted it. It works like a charm. Like I say, I use it all the time for that very purpose. If any of you guys are still watching, I really appreciate it. I'm hoping that you guys learned something, that I helped somebody out there. Oh, I actually wanted to bring something up to you guys that has nothing to do with that. Some of you guys know that we recently picked up OLIGHT as an affiliate partner for the channel. It's a part of how we make our money around here. May 8th, so as of this recording, it will be tomorrow, May 8th, 2020. They are having a flash sale on the Warrior X Pro. This thing is an absolute beast. You can get this for 30% off. You can bundle this and the i5T for 40% off. So if you bundle this, you get 40% off the whole thing. If you use the link in the description that takes you to OLIGHT's website, use the code INSPIRE10 at checkout, you will save 10% on anything else. That doesn't apply to this sale, but any other time. So if you're watching this 2 weeks from now and you missed this, that's okay. You can still go and save 10%. And by doing that, using that product code, you're also benefiting us. We get a small commission from that as well, which again is how we make our income. And for that, we're super grateful. This thing is an absolute beast. This is 2250 lumens, which is like as bright as the sun, it seems like. I tried to shine it down the street and get some video and show you guys what that would look like. It didn't record very well, so I brought it out into the shop and shined it out here to show you guys what it would look like during a power outage. It was pitch black in here. The thing lights up the whole room. It has a low beam and a high beam. I shined it up at the ceiling. You could basically use it as a work light. Now, of course, that's not very practical, but this thing is pretty awesome. Tactical style, right? So we have a tactical face here, tail cap, feels good in the hand. It's awesome. So if you are in an industry where you might use something like this, or you just want a really solid, very well built, attractive, really friggin' bright light in case of emergency, this is your go-to. That's exactly what I'm going to use this for. Also, the i5T, this is one that I have on the bench all the time. I have the copper version that I got a while back, and I absolutely love these little guys. Little 2-speed or 2-beam, okay, high beam, low beam, works great for everyday carry. So again, take advantage of that if you guys can. If you missed it, again, you can save 10%. I appreciate you hearing me out on that whole deal. Let me know if you have questions about the whole router setup thing. Maybe I said something a little goofy or something that you caught, or if you have another idea. Like I say, you can get the cones for those to adjust those from the factories. I just don't know if one size fits all. So look around your shop, come up with other systems and other ways of doing stuff. That's it for me. Thank you so much for watching this video. As always, we'll see you guys in the next one.